What's going on, everyone?
Welcome to the stream. I'm Chad Perkins with Maxon. I'm here with Rodolfo, Lord and King of ZBrush.
Well, yeah. You can tell by the branding, right, around my screen. And
yes, exactly. That's the Lord and King thing. That's what that Z means. But welcome, everybody. What we're going to do here in a second is Rodolfo is going to cover the new features just released in ZBrush for iPad. And we have a bonus file for you as well. And we'll tell you how to get access to that. And first, I'm going to share with you. Let's see if I can pull this off. I'm going to share with you. That's not the right layout. Here we go. We'll just do this. I'm producing the show today, and it's going to be like this, where it's kind of a mess a little bit, but we'll do some housekeeping. We have this link here in the description. Let's see, this link right here you can go to, and this is like our new housekeeping thing. And when you use this link, you'll be able to have access to all of our stuff. There's Maxon events, which will take you to the upcoming webinars we have, the free training. All of our stuff is recorded and then put on the training team YouTube channel, the Maxon training team. You could get that link here as well. Also, Cineversity for free training. And also there is a free t-shirt as always. So when you click this link to get this free t-shirt, it will ask you for a code, a secret code. And the secret code is this. That is the secret code. Beautiful textures, all caps, one word, beautiful textures. And then you can use that to get a free t-shirt. And that's all for that thing. But then also we want to point out that there is also ZBrush Central. That's ZBrushCentral.com. And then also ZBrush Live for more live ZBrush training. So I think that's all the things that I needed to cover. And so unless Rodolfo, you have something else that you would like to go over, but that's all I wanted to cover for the housekeeping. And I'm sure everyone's excited for me to zip my trap and hand it over to you for some hot ZBrush iPad action. And let me see if I can switch over to your screen here.
Yeah, so
yes.
Yeah, pretty much covered everything. Like ZBrush Central
good.
is where the ZBrush community is hosted. So there's a lot of great artwork being posted there every day. And also ZBrush Live, this is being streamed to the ZBrush YouTube channel as well, which means that you also get streams from some of the artists in the community that have been there for a while, and they stream very often on that channel. So yeah, so any questions that you guys might have, just pop them in the chat, and Chad will, and chat, it sounds like the same because of my accent, but Chad will interrupt me. Feel free to interrupt me, Chad, please, because I can yap a lot. I go on a ramble more often than not, so please feel free to interrupt me and stop my yapping. So yeah,
love your yapping.
Oh yeah, a lot of people say that until they experience it firsthand, right? So yeah, so let me just switch here to the screen that we have over here. So what you can see right now on screen is ZBrush for iPad 2025.0.1, and this model is the model that you'll get if you go to the link in the description on YouTube. You can access this project file, and this project file includes the acts that I modeled for the stream, but also if you go under subtool and turn on the visibility set number 2, you'll get the acts without the topics that we will discuss on the stream, right? So basically we've just released this version earlier this month, and what we added was a lot of features that were very common, very frequent requests from the community. And so people have been asking for surface noise. People have been asking for UV support. People have been asking for all of that. And that's what I'm going to go through. And in case you've been following the YouTube channel, you'll probably notice that We've also added more videos to the playlist on the Getting Started series for ZBrush for iPad. So feel free to check those out. And you can also access them through the app. So you can go over to this little question mark on the top right corner and click on tutorials, and you'll access that playlist immediately. And we are updating that playlist as we add new features to this. So if you're tired of my apping on stream, you can always listen to it again and again and again on loop on YouTube, which is super fun. For some people might say. So yeah, so this is what I've modeled for this stream. And to cover this, you can see that we have a few things here. We have some models, like some different subtools for each one of these pieces on the axe. We can actually see that you have some patterns that are repeating. Well, you can't really notice they're repeating, but those patterns are using the brand new feature that we just added from it's very, very popular on the desktop, and we just added it on the iPad, which is under the tool palette. You can access surface, the surface sub palette, which has surface noise included. And you can see this is the model that I have active. So I can just enter solo mode here and go to the tool palette and click noise. And as you click noise, it's going to apply that noise all around the model. So if we access this edit button on the surface sub palette, you'll see that there's a new pop-up window, which is the noise maker, right? So once you access this, you can see we've done some revamping to the UI on this pop-up window. And one of the things that you'll notice if you have been a desktop user is that now we've added these little tabs on the top right. And these tabs basically just, tidy up and categorize every little thing on the surface tab neatly for you. So on the noise tab, let me just reset this. Let me just delete this and reset this whole thing. So on the noise tab, you can actually tweak the basic noise, which is this regular noise that you get for default on once you open that. This is the first and generic noise, and this is procedural noise, which means it's being projected on the surface regardless of your positioning on the surface. It's being generated via a curve, which we're going to talk about in a little bit. So this noise is basically this tab basically allows you to control not only the strength but also the scale of that noise, so you can control that as well. And then also you can tell it to do different mixing, and we're going to go through that as soon as we add a second element to that noise. So on surface noise, you have two elements: the procedural, or we call it basic noise. I call it procedural, but it's not really procedural 100%, but it is in the sense that it is not necessarily just being applied to UVs. So it's not like a texture per se. So you can use that. You can magnify by mask and do strength by mask, depending on if you have a mask applied to the model or not. And then obviously you can go to the curve, and on the curve, let me just reset this. This would be your default noise settings on the curve. The curve actually allows you to tweak that pattern. And you have to imagine that as you're tweaking this curve, you're actually tweaking the alpha, let's say, that's being generated by this pattern, right? So if you look at this pattern, there's obviously a peak to that noise, and then there's a low point to that noise, and that's what you're actually controlling. So if I make this peak really, really small, you can see what's going on. So you can tweak this, and you can tap this little button on the top to make those curve points flat, or actually make them interpolate between the 2 points. So as you do this, and as you tap on this curve, you're creating another point over here. So you can create like pretty weird, crazy noises right here. And then you have access to the curve settings, and the curve settings are basically you can turn on and move the focal shift, which basically compresses all of those points either on the left or the right, depending on the effect that you want. And the offset basically will make a cutoff point, and as soon as it clips through one of those points, you're going to start to see it's basically disappearing, because again, anything in ZBrush that's 100% black is completely transparent, and 100% white obviously is completely opaque. So whenever something is completely black, it's just going to disappear because it's a rendering thing. And doesn't mean that it will disappear when you apply the noise, though. We'll talk about that in a little bit. And you can also add a noise to the noise, which is not confusing at all. So basically what you're doing is you're adding noise to the curve, not really to the final noise. And as you're doing that, is basically repeating and making this effect to the, you have the basic noise that you have driven by your curves, but then obviously you can add some variation to that, some micro variation to that.
So is
Okay.
that for adding like high frequency detail to that?
Yes. So basically, you're adding that high frequency. Obviously, this, I would say, for me at least, this is way more useful for rendering. If you want to render something with that effect, that is cool, because to get this amount of detail, you'd have to have a super high poly mesh, right? And and to do that, well, you could, in essence, do that to create some variation to the surface, because then again, what it's going to do at the end, once you apply this surface noise, is it's going to displace that geometry on the mesh. So if you want to add that slight variation in that surface noise as the displacement moves around in the surface, then that's fine. You can also tile that noise. So you can actually tile those points that we have there. Let me just remove this noise over here. So if I remove that, and you can see what I'm doing is basically tiling those anchor points on that curve, and it's creating this sort of like what do you call this? I just forgot that term. Posterization kind of effect, right? So you're sort of like posterizing your granular detail on your model. And this might be what you want for something like rust, like an effect that you get in metal. Sometimes rust layers on top of each of itself, and it gets something like this. So, and then obviously you can control the strength of the curve. Again, we're talking about the curve. This is the curve setting. So you're just amplifying that curve and those points. And if you want to delete any of these points, by the way, you can just press this little button on the top. And obviously you can still control the focal shift of that, of the each individual point, which means you can go over here and just move this little circle. So let me just remove this strength to, let me put it back to 0 just for now. So what I'm doing essentially here, or actually let me reset the curve and add a point over there and maybe another point over there. So what I'm doing with this, whoops, let me just, I'm just using the tablet. I should use my fingers. So whenever you see, by the way, a white point, a white dot on my screen, that's because I'm using the Apple Pencil Pro. Whenever you see a blue dot, that's my finger, right? So whenever you want to change that interpolation between the two curves, you can see over here, right? That little curve over there, you basically change this fall off with it between the points, and it's going to give you a slightly different effect, a smoother transition between the points, or a more harsh transition. Obviously, you can still just make this completely flat, and you'd get something like this. So now, moving on again, because I rant a lot and never stop yapping, going on tangents. So we can go down here and do some curve transformation. So what this does is, since this is, procedural noise, what you can do is you can offset this, and it's going to offset on the x-axis. You're doing a three-dimensional offset. It's not just offsetting in the 2D plane as if it was a texture, right? If it was a texture, obviously you can only move them in the u and v coordinates, and you need to have UVs for that. Over here, we can do z offset, x offset, y offset, and then z offset, right? So you can see that even the front side, if the front facing part of that noise is changing as you're doing the Z. You have to imagine that this noise is three-dimensional, kind of like a cloud. And then as it's intersecting with the mesh, it's going to displace that mesh, right? So once you do that, let's just reset this offset. Let's reset the curve. And let's imagine now, for giggles, right? Let's do it for giggles. I want to add a pattern to this, a specific pattern, right? If you go to alpha and you click on this select image, you're going to have three options, right? You can add images that you have on your iPad, stored on your iPad. You could be browsing the web, grab any picture, by the way. It doesn't need to be a black and white picture. It doesn't matter. Or you can add it from your photo library. So you could be taking pictures with your iPad or whatever. You could be on a park, just taking pictures of like some I don't know, some texture on a rock or a texture on the bark of a tree or something like that, and then just add it here, and it's going to convert that into an alpha. Or you can literally take a picture, like within ZBrush. So if I click this, you're going to see, I'm going to allow it for now. You're going to see basically that I have control over my camera. And if I take a picture of this, it's gonna, I can choose, okay, of course, this picture is beautiful. Look at that, it's art. So if I click use photo, now it's converting that into an alpha. And obviously it has a very bright light on the left and a very dark shadow on the right, which is not ideal. But this just goes to show that you can literally just take pictures on the fly. If you're just applying the noise to a certain area and you want a specific pattern, let's say you're doing a tour on an old, like, ancient ruin or something, or you're at a museum. I don't know if you're allowed to take pictures at museums. It depends. If you're doing it for this, like, let's just say it's research, right? Just tell the security guard you're doing research. You're not doing anything wrong. So you take a picture of whatever, like a pattern, like some tapestry. You have like those beautiful, I don't know, from like if you go to like a tapestry museum, they have like beautiful patterns that you really can't find good reference online. Sometimes I have a hard time finding reference for those. So you can just take a picture and get it here, and you have a noise pattern. So let me just delete this one. I'm going to use a picture that I have on my alpha. Actually, I have an alpha over here. Let me just do not photo library. No, it's actually on my iPad. Let me just go iPad, ZBrush, and I'm going to go to Z Startup and go to alphas. Actually, it's on the other folder. So I'm going to do that. Go to Z Startup, go to alphas, and I have this stylized pattern that I created. All right. So now what you can see is that I can see that pattern is being repeated all over the surface. So if I do this, and now I have another slider on my noise tab, which is the alpha scale. So before I only had the noise scale, which is the basic noise, right? Just remove the mix so you can see just the alpha. And as I move move this slider left and right, it's going to repeat that pattern all over my model, right? And obviously, if you have UVs, that little UV tab over there is going to get unlocked basically for you. So let's do that on this axe. Let me just turn off noise for this one. Let's do that on the axe because I know I have UVs on those because I need UVs for that. So let me go to and change my subtool view sets, like to the view set number 2. And if you're following along with the project files, this is the view set you need to be if you want to follow along with what I'm about to do. So if I go to handle demo and I go down here, there's a new tab now that we just added that's called UV map and texture map. We can also apply textures, and you can bake color to textures and textures to color. So let's do the UV map. So if I click morph UVs, this is a little tangent, okay? I'm a little. I was trained by Paul, so here's the thing. I got that from him. I'm Captain Tangent Junior. Okay, I can go on a tangent forever. So if I go over here, first of all, I have array mesh. So I'm using array mesh to just preview what it's going to look like on the other side. So as you click morph UV, what's going to happen is you're going to preview the UVs, right? That's pretty standard, right? So the thing is that a lot of people don't really understand about morph UVs is that morph UVs allows you to sculpt on the UVs. So if you sculpt on the UVs and then click morph UVs again, you're going to retain that sculptural detail. So let's say for example, that I want to sculpt a stroke all along this blade, let's say, and I could do it manually. I can go over here with my Damien standard brush and just let me just go over here and reduce the draw size, and I could go, oh my god, this is crazy. Or I can, well, obviously I need lazy mouse for this. So even with lazy mouse, if I turn on lazy mouse and up this lazy radius to, like, I don't know, 50, even then it's kind of hard to retain that distance, and to make this stroke flow correctly with that shape. So this is probably not the best example of this. There's probably a lot of more examples with armor and stuff like that has like very organic, but at the same time very clean surfaces, right? And you want to have a stroke following along like the trim of a shirt or armor, or you want to do some stitching or whatever it is. And obviously you can come over here and you can see how useful this can be for something like that, because this is this sculptural detail that you see on your UVs, that's on purpose. It's that bump slider over there. If you go to that bump slider and reduce it back to 0 and click morph UVs, you're not going to see any of your sculpted detail. But by default, we leave this at 50 on purpose, so you can see a little bit of your sculpts that you've done before in 3D, and you can follow your stroke along that sculpt. So let's say I want to do this like that. So I want to do a stroke coming from here, and it's way easier for me to do it on a flat surface than it is. Let me do another brush. Let's try the standard, which is a little more clear cut of what's happening. Let me just go to stroke, up this lazy radius to like, I don't know, 78, whatever it is. And I'm going to change this to Z sub, and I'm going to do that. Actually, it's not doing it for some reason. Let's do inflate. Yeah, it's the lazy mouse. For some reason, it's not working. Let me try again with lazy mouse turned on. It's not working with lazy mouse. Doesn't matter. We could do without lazy mouse just to prove my point. So let's go over here and do that stroke over there. And now if I click morph UVs again, that stroke should be retained. It is. It's just on this side, right? Because we only done it on one side. So again, you have to plan your UVs out and then make your UVs in a way that would work for your sculpt. So let's try, for example, doing a one stroke from one side to the other. So if I go to morph UVs, let's try this again, but with the dim standard. And let's do, I don't know, like a stroke like that, and then hold shift, and then let go of shift. And then I'm going to repeat that and go to morph UVs and unmorph that. That should work. No, it's not working. Not with lazy mouse for some reason. Okay, let's turn off lazy mouse then. Lazy mouse turned off, and let's do, or paint, for example. You can do paint, and you can go, let me just do paint. Okay, so let's do a paint because that one would be more easy to see, right? Let's do morph UVs. And now I have this black and white color, and I'm going to change my material to something that would be easier to see in preview. So let's go to something like skin shade. Where's skin shade? There it is, skin shade 4, right? So with skin shade 4, let me invert that one. I can paint this stroke over here, right? So I can do this and then hold shift and then let go, and I have that stroke. And if I do that, for example, on this part, and let's just do crazy. See how my stroke is? It's like perfect. Look at that. I need to draw more. Up that lazy radius just a little bit. There we go. I don't know why that wasn't working on dim standard. So if I do a stroke like this, look at that. It's beautiful. I really need to work on my drawing again. Jesus. So let's go over here, morph UVs, and now you can see it's going to retain that stroke. Well, if I was good at having my hand steady, that would have been better. But again, you can also just tweak your lazy mouse settings over here. And another thing that I wanted to mention, and I intentionally avoided mentioning that, is that we have updated the Apple Pencil Pro. So we have more features that are taking advantage of the Apple Pencil Pro. One of them being that now any of these menus that you see over here, first of all, you can see we have hover states now, right? So as I'm hovering over any of these little buttons, any button actually, you can not only see the description of that button, but also the hotkey, if there's a hotkey, because now we have hotkey support on the keyboard. If you have an Apple keyboard and you have your iPad plugged in, you can see what hotkey is going to access that. So if I press the B on my keyboard, it's just going to access that brush palette. So it's way closer to the experience that it was on the desktop, where you can just use hotkeys to basically switch back and forth between brushes. So another thing we did is as we're hovering any of these basically round menus, you can just tilt your, let me just switch this so you guys can see. You can just go like this and just tilt your Apple Pencil Pro, and it's going to tweak the focal shift. And you can see, like, let's put my brush over there. The draw size, I'm not even touching the screen, okay? I'm just tilting the pen on top of that. And you can change the Z intensity, and you can change the RGB intensity, and obviously the focal shift over there. So this is useful if you're using this, the modifier wheel, and you're like, okay, I'm holding the masking key. And traditionally, you'd have to use your finger as well to just scrub up and down the intensity, the draw size, or whatever. But if you're holding any of these keys to access like select brushes, to access the clip curve brushes, the masking brushes, you'd have to do some finger gymnastics over here. Like you'd have to use the other fingers to go over like that. You can see I have 2 fingers on right now. And that's cool, but it's also fine if you just want to do this with your Apple Pencil Pro, right? So that is, you can customize the hotkeys by going over to your UI settings and tell it which shortcuts to show. So if you're you can show the Apple icons, you can show the Apple label. So let's do the undo history. If I hover over the undo history, you can see this is the Apple icons, right? And then you can change that to the Apple labels. In this case, it's going to say Command Z, because your keyboard should have Command Z. Or you can change it to the Windows labels if you're used to a Windows keyboard and you hover over the undo history now and you have Control Z instead of Command Z, right? And you can customize that to however you like. So yeah, this is the tangent problem that I told you, chat, about. Like, I have a problem, okay? I'm going to go to Tangent Alert Anonymous or something. And
it's beautiful, dude. Tangents are what make it fun. Tangent away.
Tangent away. So yeah, so this is the UV map that we've added. So any model that you guys have that has any form of UVs will now be supported on ZBrush for iPad, and obviously has a lot of sculpting abilities and sculpting possibilities that would allow you to do a lot of things over here. So now, since this one has some UVs, let's project that surface noise that we just had on this centerpiece on the on that blade. So let's say I like this noise that I have over here, right? So what I can do is I can copy that. And if I click this button, this little button over here, the second one from the right, and I go to my other subtool, I can click this edit button and then just paste it. And now I have the same noise, regardless of what settings I tweaked. So now the cool thing about this is that we can mix and match between the procedural noise and the alpha that we have here. And this is what this mix basic noise is going to do, right? So first of all, let me tweak this strength to be maybe on the, let's do the opposite. So let's make it like indent. And then as we mix this noise, now we have to choose an effect. This, you have to think of this sort of like blend modes, right? In Photoshop or whatever. So if you multiply, it's basically multiplying that procedural noise that we have from this curve onto that alpha. And then you can tell it how much, basically. So this is sort of like your opacity slider in a sense. And then you can tweak that noise scale. This is the basic noise scale, and tweak the alpha scale as you're doing that. And if you can see now that since we are on a mesh that has UVs, this little button over here is now available. So I can click this. It's going to go around the UVs. Obviously, these UVs were not unfolded for this purpose. They were unfolded for sculpting purposes. I wanted this side of the blade, this side over here, to be flatter. So that means if I sculpt it in a straight way, it's going to go around the blade. So it's not meant for this, but you can still do it if you like. Doesn't hurt to try. So I'm going to do 3D projection in this case, and I could do, like, for example, minimum noise. So the noise is only going to go on the darker parts of that alpha, right? And if you have an alpha that's being custom made, and I can, maybe touch upon a few things here and there and how to make alphas. That's not the point of this stream, though. Join me on my stream so we can go over that. And there you go. So the minimum noise is going to go on the darker parts. Maximum noise is going to go on the basically the brighter parts. In this case, are the relief parts, right? So if you want to do maybe some damage, you would go for maximum noise. Now you're wondering probably, why is this black and white? Why is this making some color variation? That's that color palette over there. So I can choose which color I want to interpolate between the highest points of that surface noise and the lowest points of that surface noise. In this case, it's basically going through between this blue and this dark. This actually is pure black. Well, it's not really pure black. Otherwise, it would be transparent in this case. But I can go and put this back to 0. And if I do 0, it's basically not going to mix any of that noise. So I can tell it, okay, I want the brighter parts to be, I don't know, let's do some slight, like a slight tint of like this pearlish blue or something, this Turkish blue or whatever. Let's do something like that. I don't know. And then as you're moving this and you click done, you're going to see that noise is applied everywhere. So now what you can do, for those of you who are not familiar with surface noise on desktop, you can mask sections and it's not going to affect that section, right? So the cool thing about this is that now I can use, for example, morph UVs to just paint a mask, for example, just because I know that I have a flat, absolute flat version of that. So I can go morph UV. Let's say I just want this pattern on one side and I want it over here. So number one, I can go to my gizmo, press and hold control and tap that. And it's going to mask anything that has that poly group, that green poly group, right? And now, so this is immediately excluded. So now if I unmorph this, I know this noise is only going to affect that section of the blade, right? And if I want to make this, maybe I don't want it to be right at that edge. So what I can do, let me just turn off the surface noise temporarily. What I can do is I press and hold control or the masking button and tap to flip. And now I can tap this to blur that mask and then move my finger to alt and then keep tapping to sharpen it. So blur, sharpen, blur, sharpen, and we can go on forever. Or we could go over to my masking tab and just click this blur and then sharpen and then blur and then shrink maybe. Let's shrink a little bit, sharpen, shrink, and sharpen. So now if I apply, let me just flip that mask. And actually, I want to blur it just a little bit. And now I want to go to surface noise and apply that noise. And now I have this, right? Going around that surface perfectly. And obviously this color is not really correct. So what I can do is I can go over to this finished piece. And let me change this back. Actually, let me turn on poly paint. Let me isolate that. This has some poly paint, right? And let's say I want that specific color. So what I can do is I can click this color picker and then move over my Apple Pencil to something like that. And it should tell me, oh, there you go. And now I can move on to the other subtool and then go to surface noise. Actually, I want to fill this object, right? And I don't want that with the mask. So let me invert that and fill the object again. And now I have to do the mask again. Oh, Jesus. So let me just tap that over here again. And let's go to the masking menu. And in the masking, I just want to shrink that mask. Actually, the opposite. Just reverse that. I want to shrink that mask, turn off the surface noise temporarily. And I want to grow, shrink actually, and then sharpen, shrink, sharpen, maybe blur it a little bit, shrink it, and sharpen. So if you do blur, it's gonna blur from the mask outwards, basically. And then as you're sharpening it, it's technically shrinking. But if you're shrinking, it's going to blur inwards towards the center of the mask. So if you do this, you're basically reducing a lot of that area, that coverage area of the mask. So let's do that and then just flip this. And now we have on both sides that noise. And if I go to surface and tap in noise, and maybe I want to hide that mask temporarily. Obviously, it's hidden because there's poly paint. And now what I want to do on surface noise is I want to go and apply my noise. So obviously you need to have enough geometry depending on how much detail you have in your surface noise. So now if you click apply to mesh, it's going to deform that geometry based on whatever pattern you have. We don't have enough geometry for this, for that type of sharp detail, but we can basically do that thing over again and just do Dynamesh, for example. Obviously, if you Dynamesh and you're using UVs, you're going to lose your UVs, right? Because you're remeshing, you're changing the topology. So whatever you do not change the topology if you're using UVs, otherwise it's going to get ruined. So yeah, this is basically the gist of surface noise. Chad, do you have any questions from the chat, or has it been quiet? These people.
No, I think we're good. It's been like an active chat, but everyone in the chat has been kind of like answering everybody's questions and stuff like that. So there was a question about if iPad 10 would work, could run this, and then someone said yes, it could. And then another question about the Apple Pencil features, if Apple Pencil features and gestures are supported. And someone chimed in the comment to respond to that. And then you also mentioned the pencil as well. So
yeah.
Yeah.
Basically, that's we've been obviously developing this for a while now, and we're continuing on development. Like, we've been full on experimenting with this technology because there's so much potential on the Apple Pencil Pro and with the new iPad Pro that obviously we have a ton of stuff, a ton of ideas, and I guess you guys just need to stay tuned and see what we have in store. But this is a game changer for me because I use this all the time, especially as a hard surface geek. I use the clip curve brushes all the time, so you always see me doing this and then going alt and then back and forth. So if I can just change that with the simple rotation of my Apple Pencil Pro, that's perfect, right? So another thing we added, basically talking about quality of life improvements, right? We added more customization options. Let's say when we're talking about our custom bar down below. So if you have a custom bar, so if I slide this over, you have your custom toolbars, right? Where you can add
Hey, Rodolfo?
Yeah.
Can I interrupt you really quick?
Sure.
Sorry, I didn't know if you were going to do this. Jamie had a question. Are you going to show how to create a new UV map for the object?
Right. So what we have right now on the UV map, again, guys, we're continuing developing this. So what we have was we added the sub palette for UV maps. So what you get is basically projections. This means cylindrical projections, automatic UV projections. If you want a specific UV flow or something, like you want a specific shell, right now you have GoZ, and you can send the file immediately to your desktop and then just use UV Master or something, because we haven't added UV Master. So you have projections if you're doing something really basic for sculpture, like if you're just sculpting a pattern or something on a flat version of your model, is way easier. But if you really want something very specific with a specific shell, then obviously you would need something like the creased edges workflow on the desktop, or you wanted something like the polygroup workflows, like with UV Master, right? And for that, you can obviously send this model using GoZ, and it's instant. And then on the desktop, just do your UVs and then GoZ it back to the iPad, and you're done, right? And you have your UVs. So this was not possible before because we just added the supports for UV maps. So yeah.
Cool. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
There was a great question by John Davis about, everyone's asking about Z Modeler, and everyone's excited about Z Modeler coming.
That's a big
I don't
one.
think we have any like firm dates about that or any updates about that. But John Davis had a question. Could you show us more hard surface workarounds until Z Modeler comes? Which feels like it might be outside of the scope of
so we could go over that. We can briefly mention one of the things that I use all the time for hard surface, but it's related to reference images, because I've seen that comment all around social media asking about, like, how can you bring reference onto ZBrush for iPad? And we just uploaded, along with the videos for the new features, we uploaded a video on how to use reference images. So I could talk about that, but obviously hard surface is a whole topic. We could do a separate stream for that, and I could go over those workflows and make a model from scratch or something. But like ZBrush has been used for hard surface for, I don't know, like 20 years now. And Z Modeler is something that was added, well, I would say recently, but I'm getting old, so it's really, I think it was 2019, I think, something like that. It was not like around since like forever. I remember ZBrush 4R6 or something, and people doing hard surface, like doing armor pieces, doing full-on mechs, full-on robots and vehicles in ZBrush without Z Modeler, right? I still remember when Dynamesh was introduced, and I saw a bunch of magazine articles on people doing armor and stuff with Dynamesh. So there's multiple workflows for that with Dynamesh, with Sculptures Pro, clipping with sculpting, like actual brushes that are made for hard surface. Obviously, we have a plethora of them over here. We have hard surface sculptural. We have a bunch of brushes, but obviously there are some other brushes around here that are used for hard surface. We could cover that, but it's obviously beyond the scope of this stream. Otherwise, I could go on yapping forever, and you don't want that. Trust me.
I mean, don't tell me what I want. I mean,
Okay.
just kidding. I love the yapping. I love the yapping. Sorry, I interrupted you. You were going on about something else, and I cut you off. You're talking about the customization menus at the bottom.
Yeah. So customization, basically up until now, we've added the ability to, if you go over actually to this button over here for customization, you already had the ability to add any brush or alpha or texture or material to that custom toolbar, right? You have the monster clay materials, you have your matte caps or whatever. But now what we've added is the ability to actually bring in your gizmo, your Dynamesh menu, your Sculptures Pro, ZBrush, subdivisions, and even live booleans to those custom tabs. So let's say I'm building a hard surface custom toolbar, right? Which I do all the time. And what I want is I want to have a few of the tools that are not necessarily brushes that I use all the time on my iPad. So I'm going to use my fingers to just, pick and drop a few of these. So I'm going to add maybe the gizmo. So I can now just hold my finger over the gizmo and just block it out. And it's going to copy that to, well, whatever my finger is. And now I can just use all of my other fingers. I'm going to use like maybe Dynamesh, maybe some ZBrush and subdivisions, and some live boolean. So now I have those 5 little buttons over here. And on top of that, now I can add, let's go hard surface sculptural. I want this bevel flat. I want this H polish, planar, I use all the time. Some trim dynamic and trim adaptive. And now I want some clip brushes, for example. But the clip brush is something that it's really not that useful to have in those custom tabs because they change automatically as you shift to the clip curve brushes. So if I go, let's say some insert mesh brushes, I want some IMM booleans, I want these primitives, I want the open primitives for mesh fusion, and I want, I don't know, like this zipper or something. So now if I just scrub back, let's do like custom toolbar. Oh, wow, I have a lot of those. I thought I had a free one. Let's just add them over here. And now you can see that it's scrollable, number 1. And number 2, all of my buttons, including the gizmo, Dynamesh, ZBrush subdivisions are already there. So this is super useful because before what you had to do is you added your brushes over here. But if you want to access your gizmo, you had to go from this to like go back to your default toolbar and access your gizmo, right? And now you have the ability, and you can see that that bar over there now is huge, right? It has a lot of things included. And obviously, as it's going to clip through to the right or to the left, it's going to become scrollable, right? So that is one thing that we've added when it comes to like quality of life improvements. And then obviously, when we're talking about, since we're talking about that, you guys should definitely check out it was, what was his name, Ara Karmakio's stream on ZBrush Live. Guy does like incredible hard surface work, and from what I understand, he uses ZModeler obviously, but he uses a lot of like non-ZModeler workflows just to block out his pieces, and those are quite useful. So yeah, ZBrush has been used since forever for hard surface, even without ZModeler. Yeah. So any other questions regarding that?
Not about that specifically, no.
Okay. So moving on, since there's no more questions, and you guys, again, feel free to interrupt me, Chad, anytime, right?
Yeah, dude,
Give me some time to drink some water, man. So yeah, moving on, let's talk about that morph UV thing. So if I go to my handle also has UVs, and you can see there's some poly paint to that. Well, obviously it's remeshed from the original handle. This is the X demo. This is the name of the tool. But let's go over to that handle. And then this handle, if I go to my morph UVs, like let's go to UV map and just morph that UV, you can see that those are, well, kind of straight. They're not perfectly straight, but they are straighter than what you have when you're not morphed, right? Because this is a curved kind of like handle. It's like this weird axe that nobody would use in battle. Basically, it's curved, but so if you want to do, let's say I want to do my like wood grain, like that, you could also use surface noise, obviously, but if you go and do morph UVs, and now let's use, I know a lot of people in the chat, and I'm pretty sure about this, a lot of people use these brushes. I just love these brushes. Let me see if I have them here. There you go, the orb brushes, right? Because you can download these. A lot of people do on the desktop. They're some of the most popular brushes. And you can also add them on the iPad. Any brush that you guys have on your desktop subscription, any brushes that you bought, on whatever, like ArtStation, on Gumroad, whatever it is, you can import on ZBrush for iPad. So I'm just going to use this because I use this a lot for cracks and stuff. And again, you can customize your brushes as well. So if you go over here, let me just use that little fancy trick over here just to showcase, like showing off, the new tricks. That's always cool. So if I want to do some cracks, like stylized cracks over there, I can just go over here. It's way easier for me to just go like this and then hold shift, let's say, and do that, let go of shift. And now if I do this, I can start like designing those striations, maybe do like some strokes like that, and I can make them straight-ish. And then as I'm doing this, if I do unmorph my UVs, now I have like wood grain going around that mesh, right? It's going over and flowing sort of around that mesh. So this is sort of how I did this this complete axe, basically, especially with the painting. So if I turn on, let's hold shift and then press this little button over here. It's going to turn on polypaint for everything. This is kind of crazy, a lot, probably a little too much if you ask me. But some of this polypaint was done like using surface noise in combination with UVs, and also like using the paintbrush, right? And masking features. So if I go back to this, what I want to do, let me just turn off the polypaint. What I want to do is I want to start sculpting that. And also I could use surface noise. If I go to my surface menu, let's create a noise here to create that wood grain. Probably not as stylized as I want, but it's still, a pretty good starting point. So what I usually do is this is the beauty of ZBrush, is that you combine multiple features and you create your own unique workflow, right? You're not just customizing your brushes because the brush system is that deep. You're not just making your own artwork. You're not just expressing yourself through the artwork, but you're expressing yourself through the way you work as well. Kind of like what you do as a fine artist, right? The way you paint, it tells a lot about you as an artist. So here, the way you sculpt, the way you do things also tells a lot about what you do as an artist. For me, I always store a morph target to this. If I store a morph target, it means I can go back and forth. And now with my surface noise, I can go over here and tap UV. So I have this UV, and I can use some noise, basically using my noise to tweak that. And then I can offset it still. But now, obviously, if I do Z offset, it's not going to do much. It's probably changing the intensity over here, but it's not going to do much when it comes to like the actual placement of the noise, because now it's just looking at the UVs, right? So what I can do is I can come over here to my curve transformations and change the angle of that to maybe reflect a little bit more like a vertical wood grain like that, right? And since I'm using UVs, you can see it's curving slightly. Let me reset that. You can see it's slightly curving over that surface, right? So what I can do now is I can start tweaking that curve, maybe changing that scale to be a little bit bigger, maybe less strong. And let's do this. Let's set this to 0, just so we can see what's going on over here. And let's change that strength ever so slightly. And now what I want to do is I want to make some clips over here. So I want to make this maybe perfectly flat. Maybe I want to delete that one. I want this to be flat like that. And now I want to go to my noise. Actually, this should be a little higher because that's the midpoint. And you don't want to change that because the midpoint is where your surface is, right? And then below, it's going to go in, and whatever's above, it's going to go out, obviously. So now let's do that. Let's put this over here, something like that. And maybe add some of this, like some variation to this. And let's add some strength to that noise. And now, if I go over here and I click done, you have that noise, and you can just apply that noise. You can also click mask by noise. And now you have a mask over there, obviously dependent on your poly count. So now if you have that mask on, you can start painting. For example, I could come over here to my default toolbar with my paintbrush, and I could just maybe change that color to something like, I don't know, this base brownish color, this muddish color over there, right? And maybe make it a little brighter, a little more stylized, and I'll just fill the object. And as I fill the object, obviously dependent on this this strength, this RGB strength. So now if I invert that mask, and I can even make it sharper or blurrier, actually I could blur that a little bit and then sharpen it up and then blur that. And you can see that it's already maybe a little too much. So let's just blur it a little bit more and then sharpen. You have to be careful because this is a very high density noise, and obviously you don't have that much geometry over there. So now what I can do is I can come over here to my color palette and just start filling in the object. And now I can switch that, and let's do maybe a darker, more saturated gray. So if I do that, and now I invert this, I have that noise applied. Obviously I tapped the model a little bit over there, so I kind of screwed up, but you can see the point of this. You can use this as a painting tool. You can also obviously just go over here, even with the mask applied. You can use your standard brush and just start just bumping a few areas here and there. Maybe you don't want the entire thing to be completely, displaced. So just do that. And now you have a little bit of the section there that's kind of like pushing forward. So yeah, so surface noise is a big thing, especially if you're doing damage, any sort of damage. So let's go through that as well. If we go over to this axe demo thing, you can see the colors are different because I changed the color over there. But actually, we could do this on this finished version. Let's just do that on this finished version. Let's say I want that to be damaged. So here's another thing. We added surface noise in 3 areas. So you can access that through the toolbar. You can access that through the alpha, or you can access that through the brush, right? So you can go over to your brush. In this case, let's do the standard. And on the brush, now you have a surface tab. So you can add that surface noise to the brush itself. And then as you're sculpting, you're applying that surface noise as well as sculpting. So this, for me, mixed in with some mallet brushes, is perfect for damage. Like if you're damaging rocks or metal or anything, you want to make a peeling effect, whatever it is, you use surface noise in conjunction with some trim adaptive, whatever brush you're using to do your damage. This is perfect. So let's actually do that. Let's go over to my trim adaptive, trim dynamic, I'm sorry. And then,
Rodolfo, could I ask you a newbie dumb question that
sure,
probably most of
those
the
are
people
my
in the
favorite
chat
ones.
would most of the people in the chat will probably like, you idiot, learn something first. But I don't know. So like when you're creating noise and then you put like noise on a noise, I mean, the detail is like so fine. It's incredible. Like, how does that work with geometry? Do you have to have like a gajillion like polygon model in order for that noise to show up? Or is that like the final part of the process? Or how does noise work with geometry is my question.
Noise is basically like displacement. Basically what you're doing is displacing the current geometry that you have. So ideally, the more granular your noise is, the higher the poly count needs to be in order to retain that after you apply. If you just want this as a rendering effect, so basically you can do this. For example, let's do some noise over here. Let's do actually some very high scale kind of noise like that. And maybe if I click done, and now if I want, actually, I can just copy this. Let me copy this noise, because you can copy from the brush noise to the tool noise. So if I go over here, now I paste this, and now I click done. Now I have that, right? So if I click render, it's going to render out that noise. It doesn't matter the geometry, how much geometry you have. It's going to displace the mesh for you at render time. So you don't need to apply it to the mesh. If you just want to overall kind of like granular detail, let's say you're doing some leather and you make like this leather kind of material in the surface noise, and you want to apply it throughout the entire surface, technically you don't need to apply it to the mesh. You click BPR and it's going to displace that mesh, that geometry for you. Let me just give you a quick example. Let me just add a lot of strength. Let me make it big and strong. And now if I click BPR, this is what's going to happen. It's displacing it. The problem is it has pure black. The moment you do any kind of rendering effect, which surface noise technically is a rendering effect. If you have pure black, it's going to delete and make it transparent, right? This was already the case in on the desktop, and this has some use cases, especially on the desktop with spotlight and stuff like that, right? So
yeah.
if I want to go over here, let's just do, maybe go to my curve, and I want this to not be like basically completely black, and also this color, I want this to be like sort of this grayish tone or whatever, because it has color being applied. So now if I click BPR, that is what's happening. So it's applying it throughout the entire surface, and it's displacing that geometry. So let me just do this a little bit like that. And this would be obvious if you had like a specific pattern. So if we do this on the demo, so let me go to the demo. This is currently surface noise. It's not applied, right, in any way, shape, or form. If I click BPR, you can see it actually displaced the geometry at render time. So what it's doing is, under the hood, when you click BPR, ZBrush is subdividing your mesh just for that render, right? So then if I move it, it's going to go back a few subdivisions, and it's not going to retain those subdivisions, obviously, for performance reasons. But if you're on a, let's say, an older version, an older iPad or whatever, and you really can't subdivide any further, just keep that in mind, that as you click BPR, it is going to divide at render time, right? So like if you had a displacement node or something on your preferable like render engine, you can displace at render time. So it's the same thing. But on the brush side of the, does that answer the question, or was that?
Yeah. That's really cool. That's my own personal question. I just like,
right.
So yes, thank you so much. That's very interesting. It's a more complex answer than I realized. It's very cool.
So yeah, so going back to this, let's say this is the damaged version of that. It looks like a rock, not really a blade, but let's forget that for a second. And if I have this, let me just copy this noise again. I want this to be at 0 in terms of color, so I can showcase what I mean. And I can go over here, let's copy, and I can go over to my brush, and under surface, well, actually my brush settings, and under surface, I'm just gonna actually paste that. So this is the noise that I currently have. And again, this is a array mesh. So if I turn off array mesh, I'm just looking at one blade. So let me turn off the tool surface noise. And now this brush itself has surface noise. It's turned on. So if I start trimming, you can see there's some noise to that pattern over there on the edging, right? So if I do this very slowly, you can barely notice it, but there's something over there. So let me just go over here and maybe add some strength to that. And if you really want to see, this is obviously because the mesh is like too low. Let's just divide this one more time. So now we're at, let's go over 25 million. If I can start doing that, you can see that noise coming through. So I can even just go a little higher on that intensity, just up that strength a little bit. And now, because it's mixing with your alpha, right? Your brush alpha. So let me just go 24 million. And let me check if I didn't go back too much. Well, let's go crazy. So if I do this, there's some surface noise over there. Actually, the pattern might be too small. Let me just do actually some scaling over there. And you can see that little faceting at the fall off of the alpha of your brush. It's giving you that granular. I don't know if you can see on stream really well, but you can see that there's some noise coming through on the edges of that brush. See that? So that is cool. This is something you'd want if you're doing any sort of damage. So this is, I use this all the time on the desktop version. So now you have that available for you. On the standard brush, it's a little easier to see. So I can come over here to my noise palette. Whoops. And then just paste that. And if I do this, it's easier to see that noise, right? Because it's coming through, because it's a round alpha. You can see this alpha has a very long fall off. And if the brush doesn't have an alpha, it's literally at the edges of the shape of the brush that you'll see, which is perfect if you're doing any sort of damage with the trim adaptive, right? But if you just want to sculpt, let's say you're sculpting a feature on the face and you want to have like some skin pores or whatever at the edge, whatever it is, you can use this for that as well. So yeah, and obviously you can just make your custom alphas. You can make whatever it is from the surface noise. So you can go over to your alphas and you go to settings, And you can do, let's say I want to alpha by, where is that transfer? Where's from surface? There you go. Create from noisemaker. So if I have a noise, let's say on my brush in this case, and I click create from noisemaker, it's going to open up that noisemaker palette. And if I click paste, now I have that noise as an alpha, right? So if you have any custom alpha that you're doing, mixing in, a picture that you took on the park, and then mix it with, standard noise, maybe do some crazy tweaks to the curve, and you can create from surface noise, and you're going to have an actual alpha. And this is useful, obviously, if you want to have more control. You create this alpha, and then you can say something, okay, I just want to apply this alpha, for example, on my brush, but I want this brush on my stroke palette to have roll turned on. So now what I can do is I can go and tile this alpha around like that. So roll, what it's doing is it's looking at the alpha and then tiling it and basically scrolling it as you're brushing it on the surface, right? So you're scrolling. This is more evident if you're using like a specific pattern. So if I go over to my alphas, let me just import an alpha. Let's go over to alpha, select file, and I want this alpha right over here, import. So now I have this, and roll is turned on my stroke settings, right? If I have roll turned on, and what it's doing is basically this, it's rolling through that alpha. So if you can do something like this, you can do morph UVs and then use this to create that pattern along the surface way easier than you do it if you did it on 3D. So you can do, let's go morph UVs, let's go UV map. Oh, actually this one doesn't have the UVs. This one has UVs. So I could do morph UVs. And now let's delete that surface noise, not delete, but turn it off. So we can do morph UVs, and let's go back to like a very standard color. And this material does not help me at all. Let's go some monster clay. Let's do some monster clay. So if we do this and I have this brush over here, I can start sculpting like that. And then it should work. Why is lazy mouse sometimes not working over here? But it should. It was just working. So let me just go UV map, unmorph that UV. And there we go. It's not. It's not working. Okay. That's cool. Good to know. Okay. We're doing some testing over here while we're on stream. This is cool. So let me go and try something else like the inflate brush with that alpha. And let's go to stroke and turn on roll. Maybe it's a roll thing. Oh, it is working. It is working over here. Not before though. Yeah, this one's working for some reason. Okay, so let me do that inflate with that alpha. Obviously, this is going to go crazy because it's inflate. It's inflating those points. So let me try it again. It's not. This is strange indeed. It is doing something, but it's not probably. Does it have any surface noise? Yeah, there you go. Let's turn off surface noise, do the roll. Nope. Well, but the point is you could do, and dem standard is also not working properly. Okay, this is cool. Good to know. But yeah, so you can do, let's say some stitching. Let's do some stitching for some reason. Let's go over here and click our stitch brush. Go to S. Where's our stitch? There's stitch basic. And I could go, because this is a VDM brush, technically. It's an alpha brush, and it's not working. What the heck? Something wrong on my end, for sure. You guys could test it out. Let me do unmorph UV again. Should work. Yeah, there is something there. It's just not doing it correctly. Might be my mesh as well, for some reason. Sometimes with a mesh and the UVs, the way they're laid out, doesn't work like intended. But it should, because some of the brushes are working. Like the layer brush is working. Okay. So now let's just move on. Let's talk about the how to make alphas for that purpose, like for the roll gesture, right? Not the roll gesture, the roll feature on the brush. What I did, and I don't know if you guys can access that through your file, but I did make this alpha from scratch, and probably that's like beyond the scope of this stream, but we can briefly mention that you can make your alphas within ZBrush for iPad like you do on the desktop, right? So if you go over to, let's go over to our tool palette. Let's actually create this from the plane, and this is like a plane, right? Just a regular polyplane. You have to go to here, make polymesh 3D, and now you have your plane, right? So whatever you're sculpting over here, you can sculpt and then make that into an alpha, right? You can create a brush that has an alpha and then export that alpha. So I used basically the layer brush with this plane, turn off smooth subdivisions, divide it to like, I don't know, like 4 million polygons, and then started drawing, right? And then obviously you can use array mesh to make sure it's tileable, right? So you can go over here to your array mesh. Let's do some repeats like that, and then just offset it to the side, and then use wrap mode, and you're basically sculpting on all planes. So if you go to your brush settings, go to your, oh Jesus, modifiers, where's samples? No, where's modifier? Modifiers, there you go. No, it's not modifiers, Jesus. Oh, it was in create, Jesus, I forgot. Where is it? This is a problem of having your custom menu, because then you can find, oh wow, where is it? It was in curve, create, wrap mode. There you go, curve. So if you go to wrap mode, number one, what it's going to do is as you touch the edge of that model, it's going to wrap around that surface, right? So obviously then you'd have to tweak your array mesh to match that. This is how I made that pattern, just in case you're curious and you want to try it for yourself with the files that we provide on the description below. If you're on YouTube, you can just go over here and basically do your own pattern going around that mesh, and you can see how it's tiling. It's going to tile up and down as well, right? And I use this with the Z add, actually Z sub, to just design my own patterns, right? And then I created that pattern out of this. And then after this, what you want to do is you want to go to your brushes, go to create multi-alpha brush. It's going to create that as an alpha, right? And then you can export this and use this on your surface noise. And that's it, right? So is there any more questions? Other than that, I think we covered pretty much all of it.
No, no questions about the features. So yeah, I think everyone's satisfied about their surface noisiness and the other stuff you showed. So
surface noisiness, that's a good one. I'm going to start using that one.
surface noisiness.
Surface noisiness.
Yeah, and Rodolfo mentioned the project files, like it's this axe, right?
Yeah, it's this axe, and then obviously you have visibility sets. So if you want to follow along and just try those features by yourself with your own designs, even the surface noise or whatever, you want to go to this V2. The V2 is basically the axe before any tweaks were added to it. Any like surface noise patterns, any painting, even the straps over here are not like fully finished. So if you go to V1, you can see the straps have like some, cloth work done into them. But without, on V2, there's nothing. It's just the flat surface. Again, I can do another stream and we can cover like how the entire axe was made, for example, from scratch. We could do another prop from start to finish. We could also cover hard surface, but obviously for this stream, we're covering like the new features on ZBrush for iPad 2025.1. So yeah.
Also, oh wait, now hold your breath for a second because I'm like blocking your face. But download the project files in the description. So in the description of the video, download the project files in the description. The link there if you want to get this axe for yourself to take it apart and check it out yourself. So yeah.
Yeah, and I think that is it, folks. If you guys don't have any other questions, then going once, going also, twice.
The chat was amazing. The ZBrush community, like I've heard rumors about how incredible they are, but everyone was like so engaged, great comments. Everyone's like helping each other. It was like a beautiful thing just to like sit back and witness. So got some great feature requests. People are wanting some more like project-based iPad, ZBrush for iPad project-based training, like start from scratch type thing, which I think is a really phenomenal request. So everyone.
So the legends were true. The ZBrush community is the best community.
Legends are true. Yeah, they delivered the goods. So Jamie was asking where we could find more of our streams. We have the Maxon Training Team YouTube channel. There's also ZBrush Live, ZBrush Central. And there's a ZBrush YouTube channel too, right? In addition to all of that business.
Yeah, so you have the Maxon VFX YouTube channel, but also you have the Maxon ZBrush YouTube channel. And obviously you can, if you go there, we have ZBrush Live, where we have artists that are working in the industry currently streaming with us every week. Some of them stream every month. It depends on their schedule and whatever they want to do for that platform. So we have that, and it's very useful because, again, as a member of the community, even before I joined Maxon, I basically learned, besides like classes and stuff like that and tutorials that you can find online, I learned a lot just by watching ZBrush Live artists working. Because again, you might have two people doing the same thing technically, like they're doing, let's say, stylized characters, right? And technically they're doing the same thing, but then you look at how they work, and they work in completely different ways, and they have maybe a unique way of working. And that is something that you can't really find on a tutorial. You can see sometimes people doing it on shows, maybe on streams and stuff, but ZBrush Live is perfect for that because we have a ton of like world-class artists just streaming there. So I would say just use ZBrush Live as like your TV. You know, forget regular TV. Just tune in on ZBrush Live, and who cares about regular TV? Just watch ZBrush Live. You know,
I love that.
That's what I do.
I also love how like we're kind of like looking at each other. We have like this Simon and Garfunkel thing, like this like artsy thing. We're like looking at each other's faces.
Oh wait,
it's really beautiful.
That way. Yeah.
Well, thanks so much, Rodolfo. You nailed it. Thanks for everybody in the community for chiming in. Get that project file from the description, and yeah, I guess we'll see everybody next time.
Thank you, everyone.
Cheerio. Take care.